Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 5, Principles of the Institution of Freemasonry, from the Freemason's Manual, or Illustrations of Masonry by Jeremiah Howe. Chapter 5, Principles of the Institution of Freemasonry. These men, skilled in divine and human knowledge, do not disclose to the vulgar the hidden significations contained under the natural appearances, but veil them under figures and emblems. Yet they are ready to reveal them in a proper place and with due ceremonies to those who are deserving and worthy of being initiated. So far, I am permitted to say with respect, preserving a reverential silence as to what further relates to these mystic rites. Heliodorus. Having stated the nature and traced the rise and progress of Freemasonry, we would now call attention, as an authoritative exponent of the principles of the institution in England, to the first two clauses of the ancient charges as set forth in the Book of Constitutions. A Mason is obliged by his tenure to obey the moral law, and if he rightly understand the art, he will never be a stupid atheist nor an irreligious libertine. He of all men should best understand that God seeth not as man seeth, for man looketh at the outward appearance, but God looketh to the heart. A Mason is therefore particularly bound never to act against the dictates of his conscience. Let a man's religion or mode of worship be what it may, he is not excluded from the order, provided he believe in the glorious architect of heaven and earth and practice the sacred duties of morality. Masons unite with the virtuous of every persuasion in the firm and pleasing bond of fraternal love. They are taught to view the errors of mankind with compassion and to strive, by the purity of their own conduct, to demonstrate the superior excellence of the faith they may profess. Thus, Masonry is the center of union between good men and true, and the happy means of conciliating friendship amongst those who must otherwise have remained at a perpetual distance. A Mason is a peaceable subject to the civil powers wherever he resides or works, and is never to be concerned in plots and conspiracies against the peace and welfare of the nation, nor to behave himself undutifully to inferior magistrates. He is cheerfully to conform to every lawful authority, to uphold on every occasion the interest of the community, and zealously promote the prosperity of his own country. Masonry has ever flourished in times of peace, and been always injured by war, bloodshed, and confusion, so that kings and princes in every age have been much disposed to encourage the craftsmen on account of their peaceableness and loyalty, whereby they practically answer the cavils of their adversaries and promote the honor of the fraternity. Craftsmen are bound by peculiar ties to promote peace, cultivate harmony, and live in concord and brotherly love. Masonry comprehends within its circle every branch of useful knowledge and learning, and stamps an indelible mark of preeminence on its genuine professors, which neither chance, power, nor fortune can bestow. When its rules are strictly observed, it is a sure foundation of tranquility amid the various disappointments of life. A friend that will not deceive, but will comfort and assist in prosperity and adversity. A blessing that will remain with all times, circumstances, and places, and to which recourse may be had when other earthly comforts sink into disregard. Masonry gives real and intrinsic excellency to man, and renders him fit for the duties of society. It strengthens the mind against the storms of life, paves the way to peace, and promotes domestic happiness. It ameliorates the temper and improves the understanding. It is company in solitude, and gives vivacity, variety, and energy to social conversation. In youth, it governs the passions and employs usefully our most active faculties. And in age, when sickness, imbecility, and disease have benumbed the corporeal frame and rendered the union of soul and body almost intolerable, it yields an ample fund of comfort and satisfaction. These are its general advantages. To enumerate them separately would be an endless labor. It may be sufficient to observe that he who cultivates this science and acts agreeably to the character of a Mason has within himself the spring and support of every social virtue, a subject of contemplation that enlarges the mind and expands all its powers, a theme that is inexhaustible, ever new, and always interesting. The Reverend Charles Brockwell, a minister of the Church of England, in a sermon preached before a Grand Lodge more than a century back, said, I have had the honor of being a member of this ancient and honorable society. Many years have sustained many of its offices, and can and do own in this sacred place and before the grand architect of the universe, that I never could observe aught therein but what was justifiable and commendable, according to the strictest rules of society, this being founded on the precepts of the gospel, the doing the will of God, and subduing the passions, and highly conducing to every sacred and social virtue. But not to insist on my own experience, the very antiquity of our institution furnishes a sufficient ground to confute all gainsayers. For no combination of wicked men for a wicked purpose ever lasted long. The want of virtue on which mutual trust and confidence is founded soon divides and breaks them to pieces. Nor would men of unquestionable wisdom, known integrity, strict honor, undoubted veracity and good sense, though they might be trepanned into a foolish and ridiculous society which could pretend to nothing valuable, ever continue in it, or contribute towards supporting and propagating it to posterity. Again, the Reverend Brother Thaddeus Mason Harris says, "It interests us also in the duties and engagements of humanity, produces an affectionate concern for the welfare of all around us, and raising us superior to every selfish view or party prejudice, fills the heart with an unlimited goodwill to man." He also writes, "In all countries and in all ages, the true and accepted have been found to conduct themselves as peaceable citizens, and acknowledged to be the firm and decided supporters of good order, government and religion. Its laws are reason and equity, its principles benevolence and love, and its religion purity and truth. Its intention is peace on earth, and its disposition goodwill towards men." The Reverend Dr. Milne, Grand Chaplain, in a sermon before the Grand Lodge of England in 1788 says, "I think we are warranted in contending that a society thus constituted, and which may be rendered so admirable an engine of improvement, far from meriting any reproachful or contumelious treatment, deserves highly of the community, and that the ridicule and affected contempt which it has sometimes experienced can proceed only from ignorance or from arrogance, from those, in fine, whose opposition does it honor, whose censure is panegyric, and whose praise would be censure." The Reverend Brother Dr. Oliver, who has labored earnestly in the cause of the institution, says, "Freemasonry is neither an exclusive system of religion, nor does it tolerate the detestable principles of infidelity. It is a teacher of morality, and contributes its powerful aid in that capacity to the salvation of souls by recommending and enforcing the duties of the second table, and by demanding an acquiescence in the doctrines of the first. And this course of discipline is perfectly consonant with the teaching of Christianity when the lawyer asked the subtle question, 'Which is the great commandment of the law?' Jesus said unto him, 'Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself.' Or in other words, this is all that is required by the Jewish law for the salvation of man. All the plans and ceremonies of Freemasonry are pacific. It breathes nothing but the spirit of love and charity to all mankind. It cooperates with true religion in regulating the tempers, in restraining the passions, and harmonizing the discordant interests of men. In one hand it holds the olive branch of peace, in the other, the liberal offerings of universal charity. The distinguishing characteristic of our institution is charity in its most ample sense. That charity which has been justly described as the chief of all the social virtues. This virtue includes a supreme degree of love to the great Creator and Governor of the universe, and an unlimited affection to the beings of His creation, of all characters, and of every denomination. This last duty is forcibly inculcated by the example of the Deity Himself, who liberally dispenses His beneficence to unnumbered worlds. It is not particularly our province to enter into a disquisition of every branch of this amiable virtue. We shall therefore only briefly state the happy effects of a benevolent disposition toward mankind, and show that charity, exerted on proper objects, is the greatest pleasure man can possibly enjoy. The bounds of the greatest nation, or the most extensive empire, cannot circumscribe the generosity of a liberal mind. Men, in whatever situation they are placed, are still, in a great measure, the same. They are exposed to similar dangers and misfortunes. They have not wisdom to foresee or power to prevent the evils incident to human nature. They hang, as it were, in a perpetual suspense between hope and fear, sickness and health, plenty and want. A mutual chain of dependence subsists throughout the animal creation. All of the human species are therefore proper objects for the exercise of charity. Beings who partake of one common nature ought to be actuated by the same motives and interests. Hence, to soothe the unhappy by sympathizing with their misfortunes, and to restore peace and tranquility to agitated spirits, constitute the general and great ends of the Masonic system. This humane, this generous disposition fires the breast with manly feelings and enlivens that spirit of compassion which is the glory of the human frame, and which not only rivals but outshines every other pleasure that the mind is capable of enjoying. All human passions, when directed by the superior principle of reason, tend to promote some useful purpose, but compassion toward proper objects is the most beneficial of all the affections, and excites more lasting degrees of happiness as it extends to greater numbers, and alleviates the infirmities and evils which are incident to human existence. Possessed of this amiable, this godlike disposition, Masons are shocked at misery under every form and appearance. When they behold an object pining under the miseries of a distressed body or mind, the healing accents which flow from the tongue mitigate the pain of the unhappy sufferer and make even adversity in its dismal state look gay. When pity is excited, the Mason will assuage grief and cheerfully relieve distress. If a brother be in want, every heart is moved. When he is hungry, we feed him. When he is naked, we clothe him. When he is in trouble, we fly to his relief. Thus we confirm the propriety of the title we bear, and convince the world at large that brother among Masons is more than the name. The principles above enunciated are, to a great extent, though not to the extent we desire, and which we shall ever labor to attain, developed by our benevolent institutions. It is not necessary for us to allude to these institutions further in this article than to say that they provide for the exigencies of every stage of life. Through them we educate and clothe the young. We provide annuities and an asylum in the decline of life for the distressed brethren and their widows. Whilst for the relief of casual and sudden calamity, we have an income administered through the Board of Benevolence of something like £4,000 a year. The Reverend Brother Fawcett says, "Charity is a complete and consistent thing. It is not a segment but a circle. Its affections stream from God, their center. All mankind compose their circumference. They go forth not only in one but in all directions towards the production of others' good." In carrying out the principles of charity to their full and legitimate extent, the brethren are enjoined, as we shall hereafter show in our lectures, ever to bear in mind and act upon the dictates of brotherly love, relief, and truth, the first rendering us affectionate, the second generous, and the third just. It must not be forgotten that without bias to any particular creed, the connection between Masonry and religion is absolute and cannot be destroyed. Masonry contributes to promote the social happiness of mankind in this world by the practice of moral virtue. Religion gives us happiness in a future state. Hence, Masonry must be considered the handmaid of religion, because the practice of every social and moral virtue, though it cannot absolutely save, is an essential condition of salvation. We may with truth say, if there be any country on the globe in which the proportions of the social edifice have not yet been harmoniously adjusted, so if there be any in which the conflicting elements of society have not yet subsided into calm and unruffled repose, of what inestimable value is such an institution as ours, receiving and inviting within its temple all, of every color and clime and creed and politics, to hear their inculcated and see practiced the doctrines of brotherly forbearance and Christian peace. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.